My name is Kristine. I'm a PT from Norway. I work with Krabbit, which is a manufacturer of equipment for children, especially working with saddle seats and activity equipment for children.
I'm Melissa Talley. I'm also a PT, and I am president and clinical educator for Adaptive Imports, and we are the U.S. distributor for Krabbit. And I'm here to help support Kristine with her presentation today. So,
because Kristine is a little nervous. She usually presents in Norwegian, and then I can speak for 3 hours straight. But doing it in English, it's a challenge for me. So, yeah, bear with me. I have to read some of my notes to not, get confused. So, okay. Yeah. Good. This is Tobias. When his mom was pregnant with him, the doctors told her that he wouldn't survive for more than a couple of weeks. They told her that he had severe brain damage and severe multiple disabilities. The mom applied for abortion 3 times, but got denied. She was too far along in the pregnancy. Tobias is today 26 years old. The 2 first years of his life, he did not have any technical aids. Most of his day was spent in bed. He didn't have much therapy, and his parents were in shock and in sorrow, and they didn't expect him to live. So, and he had siblings that they tended to. The doctors were more concerned with feeding and nutrition, so he didn't have any, stimuli to learn new things, milestones. He got his first chair at 2 years, first stander at 4 years, and first wheelchair at 5 or 6 years. He now speaks a few words, communicates quite well with his eyes and with sounds. He can say some names, and he plays with his toys. He's a really happy 26-year-old, and he survived. What would have happened if he would have had early intervention? Early intervention. With normal babies, we start when they are newborn. We start with positioning them in supine when they're sleeping, in prone during the day as much as possible. We help them turn their heads and support them to gain stability and feel safe. Modern research states that early stimulation helps brain development, and brain development helps motor and cognitive development. This goes hand in hand and is not isolated from each other. Working with disabled children, I'm determined to find equipment that can help giving them the same opportunities at an early time. Even though a lot of time often goes by ensuring medical aspects, the child's development is dependent on us giving stimuli and opportunities to develop important motor, social, and cognitive skills. And I want to give them equipment that also helps social participation, play, and fun, because this is very important for the quality of life. As we can see on this baby on the left, asymmetries develop quite fast. This is a healthy baby. Fortunately, when the healthy babies start developing and moving against gravity, a lot of these asymmetries will disappear. But what happens if the baby turns out to have a disability? On the picture on the right-hand side, you can see a scoliosis that has developed quite quickly and may become life-threatening. So today, Missy and I will speak about positioning in lying, standing, and sitting, in addition to choosing good equipment at the right time for the right reasons. Giving the child the right side support in a chair won't help much if he's not positioned right during sleep, for instance. New theory states that genes are not as important as we thought. Environment and facilitation is as important. Brain and motor development goes hand in hand and goes not isolated from each other. Motor skills help self-esteem and understanding of the surroundings. Self-esteem is incredibly important for quality of life. That's why we need to start early also with the disabled children, not only the healthy ones. We usually do at Krabbit a hands-on evaluation to identify irregularities. Together with the PT and the OT assigned to the child, different tests are used to determine the delays of development. In addition, we often use the PPAS, Posture and Postural Ability Scale, to identify asymmetries. We do this in lying, sitting, and standing, and choose equipment not only to master health issues, but to give the child the best opportunity for participation and independent mobility. We have a tendency to talk about alignment, symmetry, circulation, all kinds of health issues. And all of these aspects are, of course, extremely important for positioning. Our agenda today is also to talk about the social development, self-esteem, quality of life. Research has shown that people with disabilities more often suffer from depression. They also struggle with other psychological issues. What does it help with a straight spine if you hate your life? Yeah, we need to take it all into consideration, right? But of course, positioning without the anatomical aspects would not work. So here's how we think when we position the kids at Krabbit in saddle seats and in standing and laying down. We need to optimize the spine alignment. Our experience is that the pelvis is the main key to good positioning. Furthermore, the hip angle needs to make room for the pelvis to stay in neutral position over time. The next slide will show you some research on this. If you in any position can maintain a neutral pelvis, the rest of the body will most likely also be symmetric. If you in sitting can place your feet underneath the body, so the alignment goes through the spine, the feet will act as active support points. We therefore want to open the hip angle, give a neutral pelvis, and have the feet underneath. Research done many years ago stated that flexing the hips for more than 60 degrees makes the pelvis tilt backwards and the lumbar lordosis flattens. You probably have sat down in an airplane or on a bus expecting to sit there for some hours, and you sit up straight and you think, well, this is going to work. And then after 5 minutes, where are you? The pelvis has slid down, your head is in front, and that happens to all people, disabled, not disabled. But if you open the hip angle and get the pelvis in neutral position, it's easier to stay there for a longer period of time. The human body is constructed to stand, walk, and work manually. In modern years, we have started sitting. We sit and we sit and we sit. And we also work while we're sitting. We do activities. We do different things. 3,000 years ago, almost no people were sitting. Maybe the emperors, the queens, the kings were sitting for a little time every day. And most other people were standing, walking, or laying on the floor. Still, the chairs today look like the chairs 3,000 years ago. Why is that? Have you ever thought about why dentists and surgeons sit on saddle seats when they work for hours? It's easier to sit up straight over time. And this is what we try to do when we position the pelvis and the hip in that neutral anatomical positions. This is actually an American boy from a family at a Texas ranch. And they saw that whenever he was on the horseback, he was sitting so much better. Here in the States, you don't get as much equipment as in Norway. In Norway, you get one chair for your dad's house, one chair for your mom's house, one chair for school. You get all kinds of stuff, and it's for free. So it's harder here for you guys. But his family made him this chair, and you can see how much better he sits and how much more functional this is for him, how much easier it will be to be social, to participate, lift his shoulders, his arms, and not to speak about all the pain he has to feel in his neck and spine sitting like that for a long time. Also, I've learned from colleague Sharon Sutherland a few years ago about the life box. You probably also have heard about that 1,000 times, but we use that a lot in our positioning in laying, standing, and sitting. We are looking for symmetry, and a good tool is using the life box. Looking for the rectangle gives us knowledge that all the internal organs are taken care of. They have space, makes it easier to breathe, circulation, and it also gives us an idea that the rest of the body is symmetric when you find the life box.
So the focus for 24-hour position is asymmetrical, and we start in the lying position. We all start with our positioning in lying from birth, and we can see asymmetrical postures develop at a very early age, and they will transfer over to what those asymmetries look like in standing and in sitting. So we do all this work to put our patients in correct alignments in sitting and standers and gait trainers, and then we let them go to sleep for 8 to 12 hours or lie for 8 to 12 hours in an asymmetrical position. So it does result in a lot of pain. It decreases the quality of life. It requires a lot of caregiving to come in for different frequent changes if it's for pain and for comfort. It impacts the family life dramatically. It decreases alertness, the endurance. I just came from the position paper conference, and they were talking about the different research that supports evidence for lying. They said there's not a lot for respiratory, but I can tell you through different evaluations I've done and using the pulse ox while you're doing a mat assessment and as you're correcting somebody to try to find a more optimal position in the lying for better support, their stats improve. They become more restful. Their breath support, they're not breathing as much or as heavy. They get more relaxed. They don't have as much anxiety. So the position is really important. And our patients, as well as us, we spend a lot of time in a lying position. It's half of our day. So we do different things to help us feel supported at night with the appropriate mattress and pillow, and how bad we feel in the morning when we aren't sleeping on something comfortably. So just imagine someone who can't move or transfer or do any of those alternative positions, and they also have additional asymmetries. So why do we do it? We just went through all that, and hopefully it's a broken record for you, or will be by the end of the weekend. A lot of these reasons of why we're doing this are fundamental foundations for 24-hour postural positioning. We know how it impacts our patients. We know, and we've learned and we've heard, and there's more evidence that we need to start early, very early. And a couple pictures I have coming up kind of show a little bit of that. But for some of those patients who have really significant tonal patterns at a very young age, you can see the asymmetry that's going to happen, and it's going to be the same, and it's going to progress or maintain and become less flexible and greatly impact their life in multiple ways. How much do we do? Well, you have to do the mat assessment. You have to know your patient. You can't just look at an asymmetry without putting your hands on it and correct it. Because as I was saying, having a communication with one of my therapists that I've worked with before, is sometimes if you don't get your hands on them and make that adjustment to see what the asymmetrical alignment is, you're just supporting the asymmetry. So if you're not correcting the actual spinal alignment and seeing how much range they have to open them up and give them more room for that life box and for respiratory, all you're doing is supporting the asymmetry in the little box and just making it a little bit more compact and not as flexible as what it was. So how much you do is really impacted by what the body, the patient, and the body tell you. You have to get your hands on the patient and see what their body does in supine, in side lying, and prone. And when you put the supports on them, how does it impact them? And then transfer that to sitting on the side of the mat. And how do those supports change, or do they change? And it confines and carries over into how you support in lying, to how you support in supine or in sitting, and how you support into standing. So the functional aspects are increased respiration, decreased pain, improved bowel control, decreased anxiety. So I am curious to see if some of those respiratory research reports were in the clinic and not putting somebody in bed with a pulse ox and then leaving them in the room. And when they get uncomfortable, see what happens to their breath support. But when you give them support and then you leave the room and see what having a good support does for their respiratory, they're able to breathe a little bit better. Their anxiety goes down. They're more comfortable, their pain. So I think how we're looking at that and studying those components would really impact that research. So development of preferred positions over time can have many origins. So Tamara Kittleson and Leanne Hoffman, I cite and quote them a lot from different papers and projects they've worked on, just because they've have done a lot in this area. They have committed their lives to it. And so the tone, the reflexes, the contractures, and the pain, it's all there. And you can see how, the ATNR pattern of the infant and then the older teenage child who's sitting in that stroller, and just gravity is just completely winning. So she has asymmetrical postures that I'm sure were similar to what is in the picture with the dream bed there that has some additional support. But you can just see where, as she's curving there, gravity just pulls that concavity much further down, which makes the hips goes up, which makes the knees go over, which makes the head go over, which causes constriction of the trachea. You can't breathe, you can't swallow. And if they stay like this for a long time, and this becomes their new normal, when you go to put them in a chair, if you're not taking those things into consideration, when you try to put them in a more neutral position and you don't find their good neutral, you're cutting off their airway, you're cutting off their esophagus, you're cutting off their bowel because they've been restricted in that position. And I can't tell you the amount of times that a child who's had their head over to the side, and then you go, we need to get their head in the middle. But when you get the head in the middle, you need to be paying attention to their oxygen level and how they're swallowing, because this is where their new anatomy is. It allows them to breathe and swallow. And when you put their head in the middle, they can't do that. So patients who have a lot of asymmetry, you need to look at that. The person that's in the dream bed, this is where we started. So after they were able to use it for a little bit, we were able to go in and make some additional adjustments to the supports to gain a little bit more of neutral alignment or a little bit more positioning. She didn't get straight. She's very contracted, but she was able to gain a little bit more range than what she had. The pictures of the three pictures of the little girl. She's very young. She's probably about 10 months old in this picture. Very severe seizure activity, very severe tonal patterns. You see the spinal curvature to the left. The hips are already moving. The knees are contracted. Her arms are already drawn up. That's what she looked like in the seating system. It's just worse because gravity is impacting it a lot more. And that particular thing there, we just applied the Benic vest. So we were able to get her more neutral aligned and get her more supported to give her more postural control. So this is a child who had supported standing. She had supported seating. She actually got in custom molding very, very early. But she also had bed positioning and opportunities to be into other positions throughout the day to give her some different weight shifting and different transfers and stuff. So we could help decrease the level of impact and asymmetry that eventually is going to make her viability of life very short.
And after we have positioned the newborn babies in supine and we've helped them over in prone, they are supposed to move over to creeping and crawling and practicing to get against gravity. And for the healthy babies, that's usually not a problem. But then we want to give the babies and the children with disabilities the same opportunities. So and we know that after a few weeks of crawling, research has shown that the child brain develops enormously as well. And by moving around independently, they learn about the environment, speed, depth, understanding the room, eye-hand coordination, even language, and even more. So crawling is extremely important to be able also to hold your body against gravity, and it's a practice to get up to the seated, standing and walking position. And for the children that are disabled, they usually skip the whole crawling period and go straight into a stander or a chair. And we want to try to give them the same opportunities for crawling. Little Aya here, she wanted the same opportunity as her peers, so she started using this crawler in the prone position with the board slightly collapsed, tilted. Yeah. Thank you. And then when she was ready, we strengthened the gas spring so that she could come up in the crawling position. And that way, she is at the same level as the other children in daycare. She can play with them on the floor, and she doesn't have to lay prone, which is a lot harder to play when you're laying on the floor. And as I have been saying before, it really speeds up the brain development as well. And these two twins got their crawlers quite early. They are premature and they ended up with different levels of CP. And here you can see what I'm talking about. Learning the room, learning speed, what happens when I tip the bottle over, what happens if I follow my brother, where's my mom, can I follow her? It has a lot to say for the brain development and opposite. And also this crawler is used a lot of times just for positioning, because we have a lot of children that are not able to move around with it. But it's still very valuable to use for positioning in the crawling position to strengthen, to strengthen their neck, spine. Yeah, you know. This is not Herman. He's not a baby. This is not really early intervention, but this is about social interaction. As you can see, his goals for sitting is social interaction, help the hip angle, balance and stability, and reduce pain. He has a lot of troubles with his hips, luxations and subluxations. He has been in surgery several times. He has tight hamstrings, and he has a lot of pain in his neck and pelvis. Herman is a very social boy. He likes to get around and participate at school. His hamstrings are very tight and he has a great deal of pain. When the OT at his school suggested a saddle seat, the specialist at the hospital said no, he's going to tip over. He doesn't have the stability. He doesn't have the strength. He's going to be tired. Well, he proved them wrong. He got a good alignment, a good symmetry. He got to keep his head on top of his spine. He loves his saddle seat and uses it for several hours every day. I'm not sure if it's because it goes faster than the other power wheelchair, because he likes to get around fast. But as you can see, he's sitting wonderfully in his saddle seat. And don't we all just love that double chin? Yeah. And here you can see him also from the front and the life box, and how, don't have to say so much about that picture. You can see it. And you can see the positioning of his hips, his feet. Yeah. And this is Alicia. She had some of the same goals for social participation. She wanted to get around by herself without an assistant. She wanted to be around her peers without an adult helping her around. She experienced that when she moved around independently, the peers spoke to her. But when she was pushed around, the peers didn't even notice that she was there. They spoke to her assistant. She felt she had a better social life, had more friends, and she said she had a happier life when she could be by herself in her wheelchair, not always with an adult. We did a PPS with her because the reimbursement system in her country wouldn't give her a saddle seat. But when we sent the report and these pictures, she got the chair. And these pictures are not staged. This is how she's sitting. She's a lot happier when she can sit up straight, use her arms more easily, have her head more aligned. Not perfect. Sometimes it's hard. It's very hard to position perfect, but it's better. And this is Ella. Ella has a muscular disease. She lives in Canada. Her goal for sitting was, of course, a lot of health aspects, reduce pain, but also improve endurance at school and playing whole concerts. She plays the cello, or she used to play the cello, and she in a big orchestra, and she could only hold out for a few minutes at a time when she was in her traditional chair. And she also had lots of blisters on her elbows. When she got her saddle seat, she could play a whole concert, and that's extremely important to her. And I'm just going to let you read Ella's mom's statement. I'm not going to read it for you, I think. Give you a couple of minutes. And as you can see, her disease has made her weaker, So last year we made her a chest board to mount into the front of the chair so that she also can lean forward. It gives her more relaxation while she's sitting in the saddle seat. Standing.
All right. So standing, same thing, very important component of posture. Why? There's a lot of evidence. It's, that helps to support that it improves the bone health, improves respiratory and digestion, enhances circulation, facilitates eye contact and increased visual attention, facilitates hip development, relieves pressure. And it's just a part of development. So how? There's lots of equipment that supports that. There's a lot of different options. There's a lot of great options. And again, looking at the patient diagnosis, what the progression or the regression opportunities are, the tonal management, how they're going to grow, what their medical needs are, helps to recommend which type of stander is going to be the best option. Sometimes clinically, we can roll in or roll out different items before the patient gets here because based on the background or knowing the diagnosis, there's certain options that just are going to be ruled out, kind of helping to educate the family and the patient on why those are, and then looking at the options that are still available. We know abduction is really important. We know starting young is very important, but the when is, I've met a lot of patients who didn't get the opportunity when they were younger, and you just start when you start. You start when you can. The same thing with all of the applications. You're not going to start crawling when they're 6 potentially, but you might look at bed mobility and things like that, that there are some important components for that. But most of the position, it doesn't matter. You want to start early, but if you didn't get the opportunity to do that, you want to start when you can. And when you're asking the patient and the family what their struggles are and where they're going and what the evidence is telling us. So it's really important. And most of the options that when you think about a stander, you think about the static options that have different dynamic components of the abduction, the prone, the supine, the sit to stand, the mobile option. But Kristine's going to talk through some additional options of weight bearing and maybe a patient population that's not as dependent, a little bit more mobile, and how these same practices and thoughts can be applied.
And this is Tobias when he got his first walker. I know, Ginny, that you were interested in the NF walker. This is the old version of the NF walker about 10, 12, 15 years ago. And what happened to him? Well, when he got up standing for the first time, we could see that his circulation improved, lung capacity, his bowel muscle strength. But what we saw was he was having so much fun. We took him to the park. He would walk a few meters ahead of us. He would, flirt with the ladies, and people would talk to him. And he was just so very happy with, being able to do something by himself. And also here, what happened? Here we go. Here's me pregnant 18 years ago. But anyhow, when he was in a stroller, people, as I was saying, would be talking to us. They wouldn't even, notice that he was there. When he was rolling in his wheelchair a few steps ahead of us, and he would have so much social interaction and so much fun. And also here again with the NF walker. And I think it's so important. We talk about the alignment, the health issues, everything that Missy has been talking about. We have to remember the social aspects and quality of life regarding having friends, being independent, being mobile. And his diagnosis, I don't know, it's a rare diagnosis. It can look a little bit like CP level 5. So even for him, it's extremely important. And this is Felix, fun guy, who's been staying with my family since he was 3 years. He's now 18. He hates physical activity. He hates it. If we are going to the ice cream store, we don't bring the runner, which you can see here. It takes like half a day. If we bring the runner, it takes half an hour. And that's, he uses it in 3 ways. He uses it like you can see on the 2 left-hand pictures. He also uses it standing up. I didn't find a picture of that. But the most efficient way that he uses it is that when my daughter or my husband is using the runner, he runs after. And that's the only way that he gets physical exercise. And he stops and he breathes and he touches his thighs and he feels the muscle soreness, and it's really just a joy. But I guess that's not the way, to use an aid, but it's fun.
Extra advantage.
Extra advantage, yeah. And I also promised to say something about aqua therapy. I think here in the US it's mostly recreational. You don't get so many aids. Funding, yeah. We have often experienced that the technical aids for pools and for the sea keeps the patient in the supine lying position. It's not very social, is it? To just be laying in supine, looking at the ceiling. And for the middle picture there, you can see that when the children or the patient gets bigger, you have to use your whole body just to support the person. So what happens with play, moving around therapy? So we wanted to make a device that could keep the child in the prone position independently in the pool. So we made the pirate. Here, Vilde, she has CP level 5. And she's moving around in the pool all by herself, and she loves it. And a few times I have taken Vilde, my 2 daughters, and Felix with the runner to the pool. And I could never have done that without the device, because then I have 2 free hands. My daughters can play with both of them at the same time. And they really have so much fun. And I think these children, they have people close to them all the time. They smell us. They have our hair in their face. Maybe they don't even like us. Maybe we smell. I don't know. But it must be so nice just to be able to be by yourself and mastering an activity, not having like people close to you all the time. So that's the goal for our devices, to make the kids more independent. And a study published in the Journal of Psychological Science found that good posture was associated with increased confidence and improved mood. It's not a surprise. You all know it. I want you to remember it. It's important. So this is Tobias. Still alive, still happy and active. He likes to do things by himself still. He's now 26 years old. He survived. He didn't die. And I texted with his mom yesterday, and he has a happy life. Still wants to stroll away with his wheelchair by himself. And be independent. And that was my last slide. This went by really fast. Yeah.